let's go ahead and open Premiere then, and we'll get kind of a project started for us. If you started a project last week, go ahead and open that if you had kind of your interviews that you shot in your small groups. And you can go ahead and, depending on wherever you downloaded those interviews to, again, importing into projects is just, you can click and drag those files into your project here, right into the project window. So for instance, if I just wanted to grab something I downloaded, I would pull it into, great, there's my loans. Drag a file and drag it into the project window there. You can also double click in the project window. That will kind of bring up an import window dialog. You could also go to File, Import as well. Many ways to do things in Premiere. That's kind of what you'll see today, is that there's always like 5 or 6 different ways to do something, in the hopes that it kind of becomes a little intuitive as you get going to it. But before we really get going, I just kind of want to go over some basics in the navigation of this kind of blank project of Premiere. Across the top, you'll see kind of different, what we're called workspaces. So this kind of, if you click between these, it'll change the view of Premiere with the idea that it's going to emphasize kind of the tools for that kind of part of the workflow. So audio mixing, you want to click audio. That might make it kind of give those tools at your disposal for audio mixing, effects work, etc. We'll stay in editing today and kind of stay with their default settings, which very basically generally will have project window stuff. All your media is going to be in this bottom left window. The top left window is your source window. Top right is your program window, and the bottom right is your timeline. There's also audio meters over here. There's timeline tools are all, I think, generally going to be in the middle here too. Also notice that there's tabs between these windows that you can kind of get even further into the Premiere tools at your disposal. I don't like to have a lot of tabs open. Like if there's anything you find as you get knowing Premiere better that you don't ever use, like info. I've never once used info. I will just close it. I don't need that in my default kind of workspace. Libraries, personally, I don't use it. I'd close libraries. Media browser is kind of another way to kind of import stuff, which is decent. Effects, very important. I do like effects. I will use those. If there's something I will always use, you can click and drag one of these tabs and kind of place it where you like, and it gives you kind of this funny like blue area of where it's going to land. So I'll put like effects right here, and that kind of just makes them more handy for me for when I want to start doing effects. Again, as you get to know Premiere better, you're going to kind of get the hang of what you like to use and what works for you. And if you want to save that setting in that workspace so that every time you open Premiere, you don't have to kind of rearrange your window, that's up in Window Workspaces, and you can either save changes to this workspace. So this is going to make editing always be how you set this. Or you can save as a new workspace, and that can kind of be like, oh, this is like Justin editing. So that's me. I like this layout for my workflow, as we'll kind of get to know it better here. But again, kind of that's something you'll develop as you get to know things and kind of get to know how you use Premiere, because there's a lot of different ways to kind of put this to work for you. But very basically, if you've got those interviews, everybody have the interviews in their project now, or some of the interviews from last week. I know we very briefly kind of went over some of the ins and outs of setting these things. Let's go ahead and pick one. If you got this 420 Snapchats interview, double click it, and that opens it in that source window. So in the source window, we have the image of the video, and just kind of go over across these. Here's the zoom level. I always set it to fit so that I can kind of make sure I'm seeing that whole video. If you go to 100%, that's going to zoom in a bunch to actually show you what 100% of that video looks like. But again, fit will kind of let you see the whole image, so that's generally where I always stay. It's always at the front here, but this blue playhead, as we call it, will kind of determine a lot of your editing choices. So always paying attention to where this playhead goes. Bunch of tools down here. You can just hover your mouse over. It'll tell you what they are. But I'll tell you just kind of like my shortcuts for this source window here. Spacebar to playback. The arrow keys will move one frame at a time, left and right. And up and down are the other ones that will jump to the front or the end of that clip. So that's kind of very basics. The other fun shortcuts in this are J, K, and L. And really get used to those. You're going to use J, K, and L a lot. That's rewind, stop, fast forward. And if you press them multiple times, you'll go faster. So like L is fast forward. I'll hit L a few times, and that'll start zooming through. I'll hit J just a couple times, you know.
Cool. All right.
So yeah, J, K, and L will kind of help you navigate that. That's fun. So that's navigation, right? That's to playback. Scrub through your clip. Grab that playhead and drag it around too. That's going to be your best friend too. Is just scrubbing through and finding like, I want to start the clip when he starts laughing, you know, and just scrub around, find him laughing, and set your points there. So if you remember from last week, what we do with these clips is we set ins and outs, right? That picks the part of the clip you want to use in your project. Because not the entire clip is very rarely all going to be usable, right? So you set your ins and outs. But let's just watch him first to kind of get an idea of what he has to say for us.
Cool. All right. Social media.
Oh man. Well, if I had to pick one, I would go with just a consistent amount of friends who on Snapchat every single day at exactly 4:20 p.m. would send me a video of them smoking pot, just like either like 4:20 p.m. like the time across it, or like actually writing a 420 blaze it. It was never that original. And you know what? We got it, guys. You know, some people smoke weed, and some people like to do it at 420. Good one, guys. Okay.
All right. A little choppy in playback here. I think my laptop's a little overheated. That's the kind of another disclaimer, is that running Premiere on a laptop is like kind of going to stretch the abilities of your computer, because it is kind of a bulky program that wants to use all of your processing. So in this clip, I'm going to want to go ahead and chop off the front of it and the end of it when he's kind of laughing and I ask him the question. So I'm going to go ahead and scrub around to find where he actually starts with his answer. So click and drag that playhead.
Oh man.
Okay, so somewhere in here, I'm going to hit the letter I. That sets an in point. So I, boom, you'll see it kind of changes the color a little bit to show you that this is now your selection. So find a good in point for your clip, then go ahead and scrub around and find a good out point. For this example, he kind of laughs at the end.
Okay.
So again, I'm using J, K, and L to... So I think I want to go out before he goes, okay. Arrows left and right, kind of find that frame. Hit an O, and there you have an out point. So now I have my selection. Up and down will now jump between the front of the clips and your ins and your outs. Very cool. All right. What we want to do with this clip is start a new sequence. Yeah. O for out. Yep. So to start a new sequence, many ways to do that. My favorite way is to just click and drag the video and pull it down into your timeline. And that will set up a new sequence for you. And what's great about Premiere is it's going to automatically set that sequence to match your video. So you don't have to worry about like frame rates and resolution and all the like encoding stuff that you can really get kind of lost in the weeds with. Premiere wants to do things for you automatically. For the most part, that's a good thing. So that's going to create a sequence for you with just that one clip in it, right? And before we get there, you'll see over here, back in your project window, it's created this new sequence here, which kind of has this funky icon to it. And the name of the sequence is named after the clip. So that was like this interview became a sequence that contains that clip. So click back over to your timeline. So here's kind of the basics of timeline view. I'd say most of your editing takes place in the timeline. General workflow is kind of grab everything you like, all of your selected clips, and get them into the timeline, because the timeline is kind of your sandbox to start playing, rearranging, dragging things, changing the order, changing, tweaking the length. You'll drag effects in there, transitions, titles, audio. All that work is going to be centered around your timeline, which kind of very basic overview of the timeline. Again, you'll have some tools over here next to it. By default, the selection tool is mostly what you kind of will always be on, because that lets you click and drag clips around. You can zoom around your timeline with this bottom bar here, and if you click on the ends of the bar, you can change that whole entire width and kind of zoom in and out that way. You can also change the track height with these bars at the end. Again, you kind of drag the ends of them over, and that kind of makes the tracks higher or lower. Other fun way to do that is if you hover between the tracks within these here, it'll kind of turn into that little bar there, and that lets you kind of resize tracks. You'll notice if you get big enough track size for audio, you can start to see the waveform, which is kind of the sound. Literally, it draws the sound wave for you there. So that's handy to kind of like take a look on. Yeah.
So the track size doesn't affect what the video looks like or anything about it, just so that you can see what they're looking at.
Exactly. It's just a view so that you can see which clip it is, because it kind of gives you that thumbnail of, oh, that's this clip with this guy here. Because if they're shorter, it kind of just collapses into a rectangle, right? All right. Anything else from the track view? Your best friends in track view, use the plus and minus key to zoom in and out. As you get more clips down there, you're going to always want to be zooming in and out to kind of look at transitions, kind of feel around the organization. And the very last, this is the best shortcut in all of Premiere, is the backward slash is the key right above return, enter. It's that will jump the zoom to fit all of your clips. So if you have like 30 clips down there and you just kind of want to see your whole timeline at once, hit that backward slash, and that'll kind of condense the timeline to see it all there for you. And that ends up happening a lot more than you realize. So those are kind of your friends there. It's got the same playback shortcuts. So again, J, K, and L works down here. Space bar to play to start and stop. Arrows to go frame at a time. Up and down to jump between different cuts. So that's basics of the timeline. Any questions down there? All right, so you've got your sequence going. Let's go ahead and just fire up another one of these interviews and get it over there. I'm going to try interview variety. This young lady had a lot to say. Let's just listen to her and kind of select some in and outs again.
Okay, we are just getting a poll over what are your least, or I guess the worst social media peeves? Like what's really annoys you about somebody does something on Facebook or...
When people put politics and religious posts. Also, when people share like 1,000 things at once. When people change their profile pictures like every month, I find that super annoying. People who are too active on Instagram. If you post pictures of your food, I don't like you. If you post pictures of clothes, I don't like you. I like natural people and candid. So anything that's, candid, I like a lot. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you.
All right, she had a number of great options for us. I can already tell just by watching that she gave us like 6 or 7 different things. I might end up chopping up and just using bits and pieces of her throughout. But for now, let's just go ahead and grab her entire response. So again, I will scrub around and chop off the front and kind of set my in for when she starts answering.
When people,
Okay. So again, that's kind of my J, K, and L arrows to kind of, you can gives you a cool audio feedback, even if you're just going one frame at a time, to know that like that's when she starts talking, like right, left, right, left. Okay. So, but right before she starts talking, I'll hit my eye, and then I'll scrub around to the end to when she's done.
You know, candid, I like a lot.
Okay, cool. Then I'll hit O for an out. That's my select clip of her entire response. Very cool. And again, I'm just going to click and drag, and I'm going to put this, again, you can set it on different video tracks. I'm going to just put it right next to it for now. Generally, you'll see kind of V1, V2, V3. You can start building up kind of different tracks. And I like how Courtney put it in the first session, was it's kind of like a sandwich where it's going to play back kind of top to bottom. Same with, you know, like if there was titles here, later we'll put titles on track 2 so that the title plays on top of a video track. By and large, I'll keep everything on V1 just to kind of keep that as like that's my flow. Sometimes if I'll do like every other one, like some on V2, some on V1 if they're like different categories in your head. It's kind of up to you how it keeps organized for you. But so now we've got 2 clips down there. Very good. We're just kind of building that out, and you can kind of see like you can repeat this ad nauseum and basically assemble your entire selects down in that timeline for you. One thing I wanted to point out with this came up last time too, is you'll see when I click between these clips, it's selecting the video and the audio all at once. So this top one is the video, this bottom one here is audio. And it keeps those by default. Those are always going to be married together. So if you drag the video, it will take the audio with it. And that's to make sure that you stay in sync. Sometimes you might want to just use the audio from a clip and not the video. So what you want to do is kind of unlink those. It's literally called linking, which is clip unlink. You also see the shortcut is Command L. So Command L, you're going to use that a lot, and that will separate video and audio. So now you see I can move just the video or just the audio. Yeah.
So it's when, remember how it was chopped in the beginning, sometimes this on the laptop does that affect the video at all, or is that just how it comes?
That's just a playback, yeah. It's still going to be smooth. If it's smooth and when you shot it, it's going to retain that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you link them up to?
Same thing, Command L. So select them both, Command L, and that puts them back together. You'll see since I slid the video over, it shows that I'm out of sync now by 6 seconds. You know, I can play that back.
Share like 1,000 things at once.
So if you notice you're out of sync, again, that's linking. Command L, also under clip, link, or unlink. It's going to be the same thing. So I want to slide these back in sync. I will unlink them, another Command L, and slide it back on top. Select them both, Command L, link them, and now they're back together. So that's that. Anything else? Getting the hang of it. So let's grab one more, and we'll kind of look at kind of another way of getting the clips down there. Let's look at interviews, selfie body pics. Let's see what she has to say.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. Oh, okay. Let me think. Wait, let me think for a sec. How can I say that? Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Now? Yeah. Okay, so I hate when girls constantly post pictures about themselves, just like bathing suit, half naked on those Instagrams. I don't like that. I think it's not necessary. And that's all for now.
That's a great one.
Okay, she had an audience back there. Same things here again. I'll chop off the front because she was kind of thinking about her response for a while.
Okay, so I hate when...
Sure, it sounds good. We'll go to the end. I'm gonna give it a second. Maybe it'll play back smoothly here.
And
Okay, so she goes, and that's it. I can lose that and that's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get out before she starts doing that.
Here isn't necessary.
Okay, because then she just ran. Yeah, so we don't need that. Okay, so I can click and drag this down again, but there's another kind of method for doing this, especially once you get a lot of clips down there. You'll kind of see that it might be a little overwhelming to like start rearranging all the time just in your head. Because the idea is you're building a narrative, right? You're telling a story. You want kind of like funny responses, serious responses. You know, there's all different variety of answers you're going to get. And in your head, you're going to start thinking like, oh, that'd be great if this was kind of like the beginning of our clip. This might work well kind of in the middle of a sequence of these. And then what's a great closer? And that's what's great about Premiere is it's called what we call nonlinear editing, is that you're able to kind of work on the end, work on the beginning, and kind of jump around and assemble that and try different things all the time. You know, in the old days, you have to edit linearly because you actually had the film running through these spools, and it's like if you wanted to change the first scene when you're on scene 10, it's like, great, now we have to like rebuild the entire thing. You don't have to do that in Premiere, which is fantastic. But there's a couple of tools here that will give you a little more flexibility, kind of cutting your work out for you so you're not always like dragging clips around in a timeline. If you look over here, these two tools here in the source window, insert and overwrite, right? They're going to kind of two different ways to get your clip into the timeline. If you kind of look at the little icons, they try to show you what's going to happen. In insert, it's going to put the clip in the timeline, and it has this little arrow to the right. It's going to push everything out of the way to kind of make room for that clip. In overwrite, it's not going to push anything out of the way. It's going to actually place that clip on top of whatever's is in its way, and technically deleting that from your timeline. So there are some times when you might want to do one or the other. And the key thing here to always remember is it's dependent upon the playhead of your timeline. So wherever my timeline is where this is going to drop the clip. So if I dropped an insert here, you'll see it pushes everything down to make room for it. If I hit overwrite, it doesn't push anything out of the way. It goes on top of whatever is in its way. So depending on your situation, you might want to be doing one or the other. In this case, let's say she was a great middle of the sequence kind of interview. I will make sure my timeline is between two clips, so I'm not cutting anybody off. So again, I can try to drag that playhead between these two clips, but you'll always want to be using up and down. Those are always your favorite friends in the timeline, because up and down will jump between cuts. So if I press up and down until I'm between those clips, I know that that's exactly where this clip should go. So I'm going to put an insert edit, and that will shoot it down there, and now that clip lives between these two clips. And that's just kind of a faster way, because if I wanted to do that by hand, I would drag this down, and then I have to I have to put her between. So I have to drag this over, and then I have to drag this down, and then I have to drag this back. Like, it's just a pain where you could just insert it and push everything down to make room. Again, kind of just a time-saving thing for you there. Come on, where is she? Keyboard shortcuts for insert, overwrite. Again, if you hover over, you'll see it says comma for insert, period for overwrite. So, and you can literally, if I just wanted to get this down there a bunch of times, I'm going to hit insert, 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 insert. That's just going to keep throwing that same clip down over and over again. Any questions on that? Very good. I think it's a good time here. That's inserting, overwriting. I think we're going to jump to adding titles, right? You guys familiar with this idea of what a lower third is? So like an interview, you kind of have the name at the bottom, and literally they're called lower thirds. That's where they are, and that's what they are. I feel bad. I actually didn't get any of these names. What's Jeff's full name? Erica, do you know? Okay, I can't spell. I'm just gonna put Jeff. It's Jeff, not G-E. G-E-O, whoever. Jeff with a G. So I'm gonna just add Jeff's name to this. That would be creating a new title item, which if you come back, so adding a title is as simple as shortcut that you would love to learn is Command T. That'll bring up your title tool. But let's go ahead and learn it kind of the basic way down here is this very tiny, I don't know why, it's so useful because everything is down there if you're looking for something. Sorry. This little post-it note thing with a little, it looks like the edge is folded up, that's new item. So in your project window, in the bottom, there's new item. If you click on that, it brings up all these new whatever you want. New sequence, all these fun effects things. If you're looking for just like what we call slug, just black video, just want black before and after your video, you can create that here. Captions, mets. Title's there. So let's go ahead and create new item title. That's going to bring up this window. And again, the great thing with Premiere is that this is going to set these default to match your sequence. So you don't have to worry about these settings unless you have to. Then you can kind of learn about it. But let's go ahead and accept that, hit OK. And that brings up the title tool. And so this is going to give you a preview in the window. See this canvas here. Based on always the timeline where that playhead is going to kind of give you these different previews. So anyways, back to the title tool. Default, these are kind of your different options. Again, there's kind of a lot in this window here, but basically up here is your tool options. You're mostly going to use type tool and this selection tool up here to kind of bounce between. So if you take your type tool and just click anywhere in that window on the canvas, that's going to let you kind of start typing. So Jeff, right? Very good. The placement of Jeff I'm not very happy about, so I can grab the selection tool and then I can kind of drag and rearrange where Jeff is going to live. I'm a lower third on the right kind of a guy. Some people like lower thirds on the left. So I will go ahead and drag Jeff down there. Options like say the font and the size and all that stuff, that's going to be up top here. I'm going to give him Damascus. That's really a cool font. Again, I can drag that back. I can change the size of the font here, make it huge, make it whatever's appropriate for you. And I'm going to generally live within this box. So that's the other thing I want to point out about this canvas is it has these two rectangles here to kind of give you guides to what is called title safe and action safe, right? In the old days of kind of those old tube televisions, they used to crop the video of whatever is broadcast and literally chop off the outside rectangle here. So whatever you shot, you knew knowing that on televisions at home, people were actually going to get more like 90% of the image than what's out there. And so they created these tools. This inside square here is title safe, which basically was the industry's way of saying if you're going to have titles on your video, make it land within that square. Otherwise, if it's outside of that square, you're risking it being chopped off by people's televisions at home. So that's what the title safe window is all about. This action safe one, action safe one here is anything important happen action-wise, like if somebody's running in the background and that's important to you, don't let that happen in this outer box here. Make sure action that's important is happening within this square here. But regardless, for titles, right, we're going to use the title safe square. Let's make sure Jeff lands within the title safe area. Very happy with that. There's a lot of other options on the right here for title properties. There's also Premiere's presets. You can just literally just click between them and that will style Jeff in all these different funky ways. Let's find one that's decent. No, they're all pretty bad. Cool, that's a good one. I take that. Let's say I like that one. Again, I'm always with the selection tool dragging Jeff around to where I like him. when you're happy, there's no like save box. This is kind of a little clunky. You actually just close the window, and you like, I always get worried. I'm like, if I close it, it's just gonna delete everything I just worked on. But actually closing that title tool window looks like nothing happened, but if you check your project window down here, it actually did create that title down here. It doesn't automatically add it to your timeline. You still have to do that manually. So again, if you wanted to adjust the title again, you can double click to reopen the title tool. Otherwise, the title's good to go. Let's go ahead and put him over Jeff. So I'm going to click and drag him. And again, titles should, if you want your title to be on top of your video, it should be on a V number higher than your video. So I'm going to put the title on V2. And you'll see, there it is. Jeff is now a lower third, and pretty happy with that. One thing you'll notice here is that by default the title is only going to be like 5 seconds, I think, and so that might not. It's just going to show up in the middle here. Come on. It is not even.
Video of them smoking pot, just like either like 4:20 p.m. like the time across it, or like.
So there's Jeff suddenly appearing in the middle of it. Here's where your plus and minus are going to come in handy. Go ahead and zoom in on your timeline so that we can make the title cover the entire clip of Jeff, right? And Premiere makes it easy. If you just hover your mouse at the end of a clip, it's going to turn into these red brackets. And if you click and drag when it's set there, that's actually going to lengthen that clip. And let's go ahead and lengthen it out the other way. Very simple. And now Jeff, the title Jeff, lives over his entire clip. And that's very happy. Another thing I wanted to say about the titles is that you can have more than one text in there. So if I wanted to say like Jeff from the Digital Lounge, I can add that, select it, drag him down there. Again, let's make sure we're in title safe. I'll probably make Digital Lounge smaller because generally the name's always the biggest, and then you kind of put where they work. Close out again, and that will update it down here. So you can have multiple titles within one title item. Any questions on that guy? We're moving along. We had a little more troubleshooting in the first section. So that, I mean, those are some really great basic tools to kind of get you up and running. In your idea, again, think of it as always this zigzag kind of workflow where you get in your project window, you go up to source window, you come down to the timeline, and you have your program there to kind of show you a preview of your cut. Ideally, I would get everything I liked that I shot, all of these interviews. I would find all of my select clips. I'd get them all down there, and then I'd start playing and messing around kind of with the order and kind of listen to my sequence, right? There's a way of kind of working with editing is kind of you listen to the footage talk to you, and it kind of feels like, oh, that's a great closer. Let's use that clip to go out on. So you kind of store it off towards the end of your timeline. And you're like, what's a great start for this? You know, and kind of finding those fun little kind of moments, and the sequence will kind of tell you what it wants to be. I think you'll kind of get what I'm saying as you put yours together. There's also, again, if you go up back to your the Google Drive folder, there's a bunch of B-roll there too. You're welcome to use. You know, there's just stuff from like pans across Annenberg. There's just a shot of the building. There's, let's see, you know, kind of those fun shots where like Facebook is in the background, you know. If you want to put stats up, but you kind of like having the social media in the background. There's stuff there for you to use. A keyboard shot, you know, all these social media pieces has somebody typing at a keyboard. So there's fun stuff there to use if you like. Graphics is kind of the other thing. We'll do this real briefly before you go. Say if you had a great logo or kind of an image you wanted to use, you can grab anything you've created in Photoshop or Illustrator. That's the fun thing about the Creative Cloud, is that they kind of all sync with each other. So if you had a great Photoshop thing with layers and all these options for you, if you bring that into Premiere, that's going to bring that Photoshop file in with all of those same layers. And if you tweak your Photoshop file, it will automatically update in Premiere to kind of reflect your changes. So that's very cool, kind of like synchronous editing, as you kind of get the idea of this workflow from start to finish. But very basics for graphics. So like on that Google Drive folder, there's the graphics folder with like Annenberg logos, right? Again, you can load that in your source window and just drag it down to say like, hey, let's kind of end this sequence with the Annenberg symbol, right? A couple of different ways to kind of adjust this, because Premiere is going to by default make it fill the screen and be right in the center, and maybe that's not quite where you want it. So if you open that again in your source window, this is where this effect controls comes into play. And effect controls also work for videos too. That's going to let you place something in the frame and also resize it. And both of those are under motion here with position and scale. Position is kind of an XY coordinate, so if you slide the first number around, that's going to slide it horizontally. Second number is vertically, so kind of you can place that where you're happy with it. The second option here, scale, that's a percentage. So by default, I think Premiere will shrink that to fit 100%, or bigger or smaller depending on the size of your sequence. But regardless, you can drag scale up and down to kind of resize that. The one thing to keep in mind with graphics is that, again, since this is a percentage, if you go over 100, you're actually blowing up that image. And if you guys remember from Illustrator versus Photoshop, raster versus vector, right? Premiere is not vector at all. It can't mathematically recreate your image bigger and smaller without blurring it and making it kind of pixely. So you'll see if I zoom in way here, this is 1000%, right? It's not going to retain the sharpness. So always keep that in mind. If you're zooming anything more than 100, that you're already digitally blowing it up and it's not going to be quite clean and sharp. I'd say like you're probably safe to like 110 or so, but after 110 it's going to start, you're going to notice maybe some artifacts and it's not very pretty. And that's because the reason like I'm at like 180 here and it still looks kind of sharp, that's because my zoom is to fit. If I zoom to 100% here, that's when it actually is going to show you what the pixels are going to end up looking like, right? Regardless, go back to fit. So that's one way to do it. Again, videos, you can adjust these effect controls too. And the effect control will always be based on what's in the source window. So again, if you kind of like had a video loaded there and you wanted to change the graphics, double click that graphic to make sure that's reloaded in that source window, because otherwise your effect controls are only going to be tied to that source window. But that's kind of like the fun nerdy way if you had exact numbers in mind. The simple like editor geek way is hopefully this works for everybody. If you go to the program window and double click just literally in the window, it creates this blue box around the image, and you can actually just slide your graphics around like that. And then to resize, you can just grab one of these tiny blue boxes. Ding, ding, ding. It's magic, right? So that's a nice easy way. If you even hover around the outside, you'll get this kind of rotatey arrows that lets you do this. Ooh, what a political statement. Very cool, right? So it's simple, and the fun thing with that is it doesn't only do that with graphics. Let's go ahead and get some video here. Within the program window, if I double click that video, suddenly I can resize that video and move it around there too. Super handy for like split screen stuff, right? So what if I wanted her to be talking on one side? I'm going to grab another clip and put it in another V2. Again, you'll kind of see I'm overwriting the audio there too. I'm going to unlink those so that my audio doesn't stand. And double click in the window, resize that one. So now I have two, and you can do like, oh, suddenly I can start doing split screen stuff and kind of have like fun montagey kind of things. And again, that's as simple as double clicking in the program window. They built that in. Yeah.
And how do you have to save it in any time, or by leaving it there?
It's just gonna stay where you, wherever you put it there. So, any other questions? I think that's a pretty good place to stop this week. And next week we'll get into kind of more transitions and sound mixing and keyframes. There's a lot to tackle here, but I think with the very basic tools, it's simple. Just find your selects, get them down there, get them in order, and we'll get more into it next week. Very good. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Actually, that's more of a